46a. And the Gemara that we learned yesterday, so we basically had three opinions about the Sukkah Lulav question of how many times you recite a bracha on the Sukkah and on the Lulav. And so we had the name of Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. He said that the Lulav is 7, and because each day is a different day, because you separate the night, separate the bracha, and then sukkah, he says, one bracha for the whole sukkah. It's one mitzvah, dwelling in the sukkah. So you say one bracha, you yaitza for the whole time. Nothing interrupts. You're always living in the sukkah. Even when you leave, you're really, in a certain sense, that's your house. That's your bias. You're dwelling in the sukkah. Everyone dwells in the house and they leave so it's not like they're not dwelling in the house when they leave. When you go on an errand, you're just going on errands, but you still live in your house. So you're dwelling in your house. You could understand, it's really a one-time mitzvah. When you move into your sukkah, that's when you did your dwelling. That's when you did your one-time mitzvah. So he says, the sukkah, it's Yom HaAricha, Kichad Yom HaAricha Damu. It's like one day. You can understand Shmuel. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. He says it's the opposite. You have Sukkah Shiva. Sukkah, you do seven brachas, so to speak, or each day is a separate bracha, which basically means really every time you come into the sukkah, you leave your sukkah, you come back in, you say another bracha. Doesn't mean to limit it to 7. And lulav is yamechad. Lulav you only do once, only one bracha. And that's really questionable. What does that mean? Do lulav once? So on that, Gemara says, well, the reason would be is sukkah. Sukkah makes sense. Sukkah d'oraisa, which really it's surprising the Gemara uses that terminology, sukkah d'oraisa. Shmuel also holds sukkah's d'oraisa, but he holds sukkah, you say one bracha. But it seems that he's real. His emphasis is explaining lulav. Lulav is drabanan, and that's why you would limit it to one. You would limit it to only when it's d'oraisa, the one day that's d'oraisa, the first day. Then you would say a bracha on lulav, and drabanans you don't say a bracha. It's an interesting shita according to Rabbi Yochanan that you don't say brachas on drabanans. You say brachas on Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysav. He understands to mean literally, Hashem made us holy, sanctified us with his commandments, and it's Hashem commanded us to do these mitzvahs. And if it's the rabbis, that's not Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysav. It's not Hashem's commandments. It's the rabbi's mitzvah, which is of course an obligation on us, but we can't say the bracha Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysav. So that would be Rabbi Yochanan's. That would seemingly be the understanding of Rabbi Yochanan. At least the Ritva understands this way, that all drabanans you don't say brachas on.
Rabbi,
yes,
I think I read someplace that when you say the bracha of bracha on the sukkah, it also includes the building of the sukkah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna look into that, but we're not. We didn't yet review that part of this. You're a little ahead of us, David. So the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, as I was saying, is that on Rabbanans you don't say brachas, but lulav, the first day is daraisa, so you could say a bracha. Now in the Beis Hamikdash you would say a bracha according to Rabbi Yochanan. You would say a bracha every day, because in the Beis Hamikdash it was daraisa. There's no Beis Hamikdash now. Now the rabbis established, the Rabbi Yochanan established that it's zeicher lamikdash. We should commemorate the Beis Hamikdash and shake the lulav every day of the shake the lulav every day. I believe it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai who established the different Rabbi Yochanan, but it's the same name. But Rabbi Yochanan established this Zeicher LaMikdash to shake the lulav every day, but that's a rabbinic law. And so Rabbi Yochanan says, we don't say brachas. You don't say the bracha. You say on the first day. It's daraisa. So these are the two opinions. And then the Gemara brought another view within Rabbi Yochanan. Who was that view? Ravin, or Ravin. Ravin says, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Echad zeh v'echad zeh shiva. That's like a third opinion. Within Rabbi Yochanan, there's two opinions about lulav. Does lulav require 7 brachas, or does it require 1? Could be Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Shmuel regarding lulav. Shmuel said lulav, you say a bracha every day, each day. They quoted Rabbi Yochanan, the first opinion, quoted Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Bar Chana quoted Rabbi Yochanan, that no, lulav is a one-time, it's a drabanan, you know. Then comes along Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he says, no, lulav also, both. Echad zeh v'echad zeh. It's Shiva, it's 7, you say 7 brachas. In other words, lulav is also a new bracha every single time, which basically means that you say a bracha on a drabanan. And the reason behind that is because drabanans are part of the prohibition of leisosur min hadavar yom lecha yagidu lecha yom usmail. Don't turn away from the things that I command you, that they command you, that the rabbis command you, to the right or to the left, and therefore it's part of Hashem's command that we fulfill the rabbanon. So that's Asher Kedushano b'mitzvaysav, commanded us with his mitzvahs, Hashem's mitzvahs, to follow the rabbis and to put on, to shake the wave the lulav. And so that's that would be a reason to say a bracha all 7 days. So in Rabbi Yochanan we have two views about lulav. Regarding sukkah, everyone agrees. Rabbi Yochanan says 7, which means you say the bracha many times, multiple times. Shmuel argued on sukkah, and he said sukkah you only say once. As Rabbi Yochanan is understanding sukkah, that every time you leave the sukkah, you are sort of not being, your mind is not on the dwelling in the sukkah. And therefore, when you come back and you're doing an act of dwelling in the sukkah, you would need to recite a new bracha. Shmuel seems to look at it as the fact that that's my house, that's it. And I was like, I'm passively, I'm still living in my sukkah. I was according to Rabbi Yochanan, it seems like it's more of an active mitzvah where you have to, I have to actively feel like I'm doing something that I'm dwelling in the sukkah, and that would be when I'm eating there, possibly when I'm sleeping there, according to some opinions, maybe. But so these are the 3 opinions about multiple brachas or individual or just one bracha. Now, the Gemara tries to question. Well, first, before the Gemara questions Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara first says, "Kulu amayroi kaimi kavasei b'sukkah," that we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan regarding what halacha? Regarding the law of sukkah. Again, Rabbi Yochanan's law about lulav, it's a machlokes. We don't know what Rabbi Yochanan really holds. We have Rabbi Bar Chana's opinion. We have Ravin's opinion. Regarding sukkah, everyone agrees that Rabbi Yochanan holds a sukkah every single time that you go in, you do something that's obligated in sukkah, you recite a bracha leisha basukkah. So that should be the halacha. That's what the Gemara seems to conclude. Comes along the Gemara and says, but Meisvei, we have a contradiction from a Tosefta. And the Tosefta, it seems to make it clear that sukkah, you do not do multiple brachas. What does the Tosefta say? So here, the Tosefta, the Gemara brings this Tosefta that it talks about Shachiyanu. This is what David was talking about. You say Shachiyanu, a mitzvah to build. So you make the lulav, you say a Shachiyanu. When you tie it together, when you fulfill the mitzvah of lulav, you're doing it. You say the bracha b'tzivanu al netilas lulav, and you repeat. You say brachas each time you shake the lulav every day. Now, what about a sukkah? You build a sukkah. You say shachiyanu. If you enter the sukkah to when you fulfilling the mitzvah of dwelling in the sukkah, what do you say? You say the bracha leishe basukah. Tosefta surprisingly says that when you say the bracha once, you no longer say it anymore. So that is really the question on Rabbi Yochanan. However, the fact is, it also mentions about lulav. And lulav, it says that seemingly you would say the bracha every single time. No, not seemingly. It says it clearly. Even though you said the bracha on day one, you go and repeat the bracha until lulav all 7 days. So this would be a question not
You
on.
just said lulav? You took lulav or sukkah?
So again, the question on sukkah is a real strong question because we know Rabbi Yochanan holds sukkah you say 7 brachas, and the Gemara here says the Tosefta says you only say 1 bracha on sukkah. So there's clearly a question on Rabbi Yochanan about sukkah. About lulav, it's a question on Rabba Bar Chana's understanding of Rabbi Yochanan. It's a question on his remembering his opinion of what Rabbi Yochanan's law is. Ravin argues and says that this is what Rabbi Yochanan says about lulav, that you say a bracha each time. But Rabba Bar Chana held that lulav is 1 bracha, and here we have a Tosefta that clearly says differently. The Tosefta says you say it each time. You continue to say another bracha. So it's a question according to Rabba Bar Chana's view of Rabbi Yochanan. So it's 2 questions basically, sukkah and lulav. So the Gemara had said that lulav is not really a problem because lulav, there is a difference between when the Beis Hamikdash was around and when there's no Beis Hamikdash. When the Beis Hamikdash is around, it's a chiyuv daraisa on every day of Sukkot, and therefore, what comes out is you would say a bracha each day, and so the Tosefta is referring when the Beis Hamikdash was around. You would say a bracha on lulav, even though you said it the day before. Say it again. You're in Beis Hamikdash. You have to say it each day. It's daraisa. But after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and we do the mitzvah of lulav every day, midrabanan, then you say the bracha the first day because it's daraisa. The other days you wouldn't say the bracha because according to Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbanan, you don't say a bracha. That's the view of Rabbi Yochanan. Now, but sukkah, now we got to figure out. Sukkah is really the problem. Everyone seems clear that Rabbi Yochanan says on sukkah that you have to say a bracha every single time you go into the sukkah, and that is contradicted from the Tosefta, where the Tosefta says, Shuv einoi mevarech, not repeat the bracha anymore. So that contradiction, the Gemara says, is not proving Rabbi Yochanan wrong. The Gemara says really Tanoim. There is a opinion that says what this Tosefta says, but there's also another opinion, and that's who Rabbi Yochanan must be following. Where do we find this machlekes? It's not about sukkah. It's about tefillin. The machlekes is about tefillin. There's every time you put the tefillin on, you take it off and you put it on. In the olden days, they would wear tefillin all day. So they would have times they would take it off, they put it back on. So the Brisa says each time you put it on, you would say a bracha. That's Rebbe. The rabbis say no, you only make 1 bracha. That's it. You take it off, put it back on. You don't make a bracha anymore. The whole day is 1 mitzvah, and that's it. So what comes out would be that the same thing could apply to sukkah. Do you look at sukkah as if it's a one mitzvah that's extended, Or do you look at just like tefillin, it's a one mitzvah each day, extended mitzvah? Or do you look at it that every time you do it, you're doing an individualized mitzvah? And so Rabbi Yochanan obviously held like Rabbi, and by tefillin you would say a bracha each time, and by sukkah you'd say a bracha each time. But the Tosefta held like the rabbis. And the Tosefta says you only say sukkah the bracha on sukkah once. So the same thing would apply to lulav, is to sukkah. You only say a bracha on tefillin once. That's what the brisa that we bring about tefillin. That's what the rabbi said. And the Tosefta said that by sukkah you only do the bracha once on sukkah. So that would be the same opinion as the rabbis regarding tefillin. That's the conclusion of our chazara of reviewing yesterday's Gemara. Okay, so we also mentioned.
Thank you.
Taisvis yesterday. We mentioned that even though it says 7 for sukkah, it says even if you say echad zav echad zeh shiva, this one and that one, lulav and sukkah both have the mitzvah 7 times. You have to do 7 brachas. Each day is separate. It's not exactly the same, Taisha says. By sukkah, it's not exactly 7. It's multiple. By lulav, it's taka 7. But by sukkah, it's whenever you go in to eat or to drink or to sleep. Each time you would say a bracha, and the reason would be that you're not allowed to eat a meal outside of the sukkah. So of course, when you're eating it in the sukkah, you're doing a mitzvah. The same thing would be tefillin. That tefillin, every time you put it on, you would be fulfilling a mitzvah. But lulav is a one-time mitzvah. Kivan the agbe nafakbe, right? The agbe nafakbe, it said, right? Once you pick it up, you've
one time per day, right?
One time per day. But the Gemara's terminology of echad zeh v'echad zeh shiva is not precise. In other words, shiva is a little loose. You have to loosely translate it. It's not exactly per day. It could be multiple times per day for the tefillin, for the sukkah. We're saying it here regarding sukkah. It really could be multiple times. Now, we also mentioned yesterday on the previous Gemara about the law of the chariyos. That was should have gone over that first. The chariyos of Shel Dekel, that the opinion. There were 2 opinions in the Gemara about the alternative custom of bringing branches, fronds of palm frond, date palm fronds, as part of this ceremony in the Beis Hamikdash. And the question that Tosfos deals with is, was it an alternative for the Arava ceremony, or was it an addition to the Arava ceremony? And so Tosfos brings that it depends how you learn. Our Gemara mentioned 2 opinions as to the source of it. So based on the source, that would cause there to be a difference. The consequence would be the outcome would be a difference if it's a total, if it's an alternative or if it's an addition. And it would also be a difference if you do it all 7 days or if you just do it once, because the Arava ceremony was done 7 days, but the main one was Hoshana Rabbah, and the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika, the way he understood it, he has a pasuk for it. Rabbi Levi it's based on a logic, on a svara. So if you're doing it out of a pasuk, so you basically use that pasuk as an alternative to learning it from the other pasuk that we learn our Rava ceremony from. He's learning it from the lulav ceremony. He learns it from from a different pasuk that basically teaches you that there has to be a date palm frond ceremony instead of an Arava ceremony. He's basically learning it out of a pasuk, just like the other rabbis learning Arava out of a pasuk. So it would seemingly be the same type of ceremony. It just happens to be, instead of using an Arava, he used the lulav. It's like, which which item do we make a holiday out of? We have the holiday of Sukkot, and we shake the 4 species, and then there's one of those items we're going to do another ceremony out of. Which one? So the common understanding is Arava. Comes along the opinion in the Mishnah that there's an alternative option, and that would be the what you call the Chariyah Shel Dekel. Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika says Chariyah Shel Dekel they would bring, and so on. Now, one second. The Gemara that we learned. So I said before, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, that's the rabbi who says Chariyah Shel Dekel, but the explanation that it's a pasuk is from Rav Huna. Rav Huna was the one who explained that it's a pasuk of kapos, and which is pronounced kapos and it's spelled kapas. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika would be learning it out of a pasuk, and that would be in contrast to the other rabbis who learned that it's an Arava ceremony, also based on a pasuk. So it would be a very similar ceremony, just instead of using the Arava, it would be using the Chariyah Shel Dekel, like the lulav. Now, if according to the opinion of Reb Levi, it's only logic. So Taishus understands that he's just saying that it's a nice thing to do. It brings out the beauty of the Jewish people. Ein lahem ela lev echad, right? They only have one heart. Just like the date palm frond, that tree, the date palm, only has sap there's only one sap. It's not from the leaves. It's only from the trunk, from the heart. So it only has one heart. So the same thing as the Yidden. We only have one heart to serve Hashem, and so it's more of a segula, like it's more of a it's an Indian, it's a svara to do it. Siman Yafa, that's the way Taisa says. Siman Yafa. It's a good sign for this Kilusan Shal Yisrael. So he says, according to that, it doesn't sound like it would be an alternative to the Arava ceremony. It would be a addition to the Arava ceremony. And also, you wouldn't do it all 7 days. You would just do it that one day. Taisus is also bothered with the fact that if you look in the Mishnah on 45a, the Mishnah there implies, like the Chariyah Shel Dekel, that this Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika's view of Chariyah Shel Dekel, it does sound like it's only 1 day, because it does say V'oisei hayoim nikra yoim chibot chariyos. That day was called the Yom Chibot Chariyos. It does sound like it is 1 day. Taisa says that if you learn, like Rav Huna, that it's learned from a pasuk is really going to be 7 days. So how does that flow with the wording in the Mishnah? It sounds like it's only going to be 1 day. Oisei hayoim is called Yom Chibot Chariyos. So the thing is that what it seems is that Oisei hayoim would be comparing it to the Oisei hayoim that it talks about the Arava ceremony, that day was more than the other days. The other days also you did it, but that day was abundance. Oisei hayoim is Yom Chibot Chariyos. It was called Yom Chibot Chariyos. Maybe they did more that day. That's how you have to understand it. That even though it doesn't spell it out, but it would mean that day, like Hoshana, that day of Hoshana Rabbah, they would do more of the Chibot Chariyos than the other days, but really every day you would do it. At least that's the way Tosha seems to understand it. It says, even though it says Oisei hayoim, it's Lav Davka Yom Echad. That's Tosha says Lav Davka Yom Echad. And I saw in the other commentaries they mentioned that it means that that day was more than the other days. The other days you also did it, just like Arava. Same thing, it uses the same term for Arava. The only difference is that Arava, it says each day they would do something. On Oisei hayoim, they have a Shana Rabbah, they would do more. Here it just says Oisei hayoim, so it doesn't spell out that on the other days they did a little Chibot Chariyos. And on that day they would do more. It doesn't spell it out, but that's the way you have to understand it. That's the way Taisus understands it. Right? That was the Taisus that we did. Now, The top Tosfos over here on page 46a mentions that when you make the sukkah, you would say a shachiyanu. Now it's interesting. The term is isa sukkah liyatzmai. Make the sukkah for yourself. So Tosfos says, you see that if you make a sukkah for someone else, you wouldn't say the bracha shachiyanu, because I mean, the wording here is pretty clear that shachiyanu would be for your benefit. When you're enjoying it, you don't say shachiyanu for someone else. But Tosfos is also emphasizing another point, and that is,
wouldn't it be that you're not expected necessarily to be sitting in the sukkah if you're doing it for somebody else? You make a leisha sukkah then, but to make a shechiyanu,
so there's three brachas really that would deal
to make
with.
hatova hametiv maybe.
But hatova hametiv is when two people benefit, when you and someone else.
Well,
Shachiyanu is when only you.
The
but
owner.
Here, you're not benefiting at all. You built the sukkah for someone else, so you wouldn't make a shachiyanu or a tova hametiv. But the Tosfos really is bringing out another point, and that is you say a bracha when you build the sukkah. Is there a bracha lasei sukkah? The understanding, of course, is we know that you don't say a bracha, but in Yerushalmi there is such a view. You make a bracha lasei sukkah. You do have, there is such a concept to make a sukkah, and if you make the sukkah for someone else, it's possible then you would actually say a bracha to make the sukkah l'shmai, lasei sukkah l'shmai. That's what it says. That's what Tosfos said. If you look at the top Tosfos, he says you would say a bracha according to that opinion in Yerushalmi. In other words, there is such a view of building the sukkah, reciting a bracha on the actual building, lasei sukkah. Now we do say shachiyanu. I shouldn't say we don't say shachiyanu. We do say shachiyanu on the sukkah, but we say it when we say it for the Yom Tov, we're basically saying it for the sukkah as well. But we're also saying it for Yom Tov. We say once, and it's really fulfillment of both. But anyway, but Tosfos is bringing out hoisa sukkah liyatzmai. It comes out if you make a bracha, if you build a sukkah for someone else, you don't say any bracha, not to build the sukkah and no shachiyanu. And that's what he's saying. All right. Now the next Tosfos also deals with why do some mitzvahs have a shachiyanu and some mitzvahs don't. Here we're talking about shachiyanu. They're making the lulav, and you say you make the sukkah, you say shachiyanu. You make the lulav, you say shachiyanu. So Tosfos is bothered. Like, what about other mitzvahs when you do tzitzis and tefillin? You don't say shachiyanu. Here you say shachiyanu.
Rabbi.
Tosfos concludes. He also deals with pidyon haben and milah. Pidyon haben, Tosfos says you say shachiyanu. Milah, and this is an argument I think Sfardim and Ashkenazim. If you say a bracha shachiyanu by a bris, I think maybe even in Eretz Yisrael, it could be they do say shachiyanu, even Ashkenazim. It is interesting. I think in Eretz Yisrael maybe they say shachiyanu, but I think outside of Eretz Yisrael, I think Sfardim say shachiyanu by a bris. Ashkenazim don't. So Tosfos is bothered. Tosfos says milah, you don't say it. So he's surprised, and he says, "Why my Megillah do you say shachiyanu?" He says, "V'nira mitzvah that has simcha, you say shachiyanu." And what it seems like he's saying is that bris milah, because there's tsar of the child, because the child's in pain, you don't say Shechianu. But anyway, what it boils down to is that sometimes you say Shechianu when it's Simcha. So the Yom Tovs have Simcha, you say Shechianu. Tzitzis and Lul and Tefillin, you wouldn't say Shechianu.
Why not?
It's not a
Don't you say
mitzvah of Simcha
on
that
a
day.
new pair of on a new pair of tzitzit or a new?
Uh-huh.
That's the first question. Second question is on why did they not say lehakim? It has lehakim sukkah instead of lasot.
What do you mean? Is that a terminology from a pasuk, lakim? What do you mean?
You say it all the time, during Sukkot, Hakim et Sukkot David Anofelet. So why not say the Hakim, Sukkah?
Mm-hmm. So the term Harachamanu Yakim Lano Sukkos David Hanefeles is referring when Mashiach comes, that then he's gonna be Yakim. And now we're just building a sukkah, but it's not really Yakim Lano. We haven't gotten the Yakim Lano Sukkos David Hanefeles yet. The term Yakim is I'm sorry.
Hakim means to bring up.
Okay. I know. I'm just saying, like, that term is not really. We don't find it in the psukim about building a sukkah. Chag sukkah is tasa l'cha. It actually says the term tasa. Right. There is an interesting thing where there's a netziv that brings the shiltais that deals with certain mitzvahs. Interestingly enough, are in the Torah, it mentions preparations for those mitzvahs. Like you have to do something to get to the mitzvah. Like, for example, a shofar. It doesn't say by shofar, cut off the shofar from the ram and you'll have a shofar for Rosh Hashanah. All it says is on Rosh Hashanah, blow the shofar. It doesn't say cut it off from the ram. But there are mitzvahs where it's sort of like you have you have like a mitzvah to do the preparation. There's like a part of it would be, like the Torah tells you when to prepare for the mitzvah. Like certain mitzvahs have that preparation. And this would be maybe the connected over here with like making the sukkah, at least according to Yushalmi, it would be a mitzvah to build the sukkah. It's questionable about the mitzvah of building the sukkah if it's a mitzvah. But there seem to be some mitzvahs that the Torah gives us the preparation for, and some mitzvahs that are just like we sort of like you got to figure it out yourself, do it. And the Netziv wants to say that that's the pshat when we say Hashem wanted to be mezaka the yidden lefichach. Therefore, hebra lehem Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, he added Torah and mitzvahs. I mean, he wanted to be mezakas there. He added Torah mitzvahs. We need every single mitzvah. We have 248 limbs and 365 sinews, and we need all 613. What do you mean? Hebra lehem Torah mitzvahs. He added. He says, no. Here, Balaam, he added some mitzvahs that he gave you preparations. To be mazakias, that we get like a schos when we do the preparation. Here, Balaam, Torah mitzvah, Shnemer, Hashem Chavis Mantzig Yag, Hashem wanted to add to our mitzvahs and give us extras. That's a nice little cute part about the. But he brings over there that there could be difference in halacha when it comes to doing these preparations for the mitzvah. Mitzvah boy yoser mi b'shluchai, maybe there's certain things that might apply to these areas of the preparation mitzvahs, where the Torah tells you how to do it and how to prepare for these things. Anyway, bottom line is over here we're dealing with building the sukkah. And the Gemara mentions about the saying of Shechianu, and Taisus mentions that it could also be possibly a mitzvah to make to say a bracha when you make the sukkah of Lasei Sukkah. All right, so and then the other thing that we see is the concept of shachianu, that there seems to be, you have to differentiate, you have to know when to say shachianu, when not. It seems to be a question about how to draw, when do you draw the line. Even Mila is interesting, that Mila, you're going to say the child is in pain, so you know, maybe
Okay, all right. I'm not
not
alive.
enough.
No
What is that?
That's your number.
That's my number there. The 3.
So, like, the child's pain, does that really affect the fact that the child's in pain? I mean, it's a very minimal pain, I would think. Chris, I don't know, but the child cries more from the cold, I think, than from the actual bris. But anyway, this is one of the sources of Shechianu, of when, this Taisvus would be a basis of the differentiating when you say Shechianu, which mitzvahs get a Shechianu. Now, Ezra asked a good question about this, because there is a concept of saying Shechianu when you buy a pair of tzitzis. You wear a pair, when you wear new clothes, you say Shechianu. So why wouldn't that apply to tefillin, and why wouldn't that apply to tefillin and tzitzis? So Taisus really Taisus really talks about two things. He says some mitzvahs have shechianu, some mitzvahs they shaloi takinu. By sukkah and lulav they established it. In making tzitzis and tefillin, they didn't establish reciting a shechianu when you make it. But then he says that then he talks about the tefillin, and if you say a bracha, do you say a bracha to make tefillin? And there he says you don't find such a bracha to make tefillin. And then he says that you see from there that you also don't say shechianu, because you don't say any bracha when you make it. So he's basically talking about, he's talking about both, right? That shechianu you don't say. So why wouldn't you say a shechianu when you make it? So I'm not convinced that maybe when you put on tzitzis in the olden days, we don't say shechianu now on new clothes, but it could be in the olden days they would say shechianu when they put it on. But here the question is more about the making of the tzitzis, the making of the tefillin. If you make a bracha when you make a sukkah, would you also recite a bracha for making tzitzis and making tefillin? And on this, he says you don't say shechianu for the making of it. Would there be a shechianu for putting it on? Maybe there would be, like Ezra's thinking, because just like new clothing. Again, we don't say shechianu new clothing, but maybe seemingly maybe they would say shechianu. But the action, the doing of the mitzvah, that's where we're thinking that maybe you should say, just like you make a bracha for lulav, it says, even you ma'agid the lulav, oisa lulav the atri, you say shechianu. You make the sukkah, you say shechianu. So there would be a thought that maybe you should say shechianu when you make the tzitzis and tefillin. Taisus bothered, why not? And he says it's not a simcha then. Lulav and sukkah, there's
simcha is not a simcha.
What is that? Putting tefillin on.
Putting out tefillin is not a simcha.
Well, a bar mitzvah is interesting. It's not really called, like you say tachnun. It's a simcha, but it's a responsibility.
What are the words of the shechianu? You have caused us to live, and you have supported us until we have come to this particular day.
Right.
Okay, so to me,
it's a good question. Like seemingly a bar mitzvah should be a yom simcha, and it is surprising that we don't say tachnun, but there seems to be a concept, and I do know that there is either a letter. I think there's a letter from the Rebbe, or there's some there's something about it from the Rebbe, like trying to answer this question of like, why don't you why isn't it a Yom Simcha that like a wedding? You don't say. In fact, the Zohar mentions that like a bar mitzvah is similar to a wedding, but the question is, so why do you say why do we say tachnan by a bar mitzvah? And on that, it has something to do with the fact that,
excuse me, Rabbi, you do, we don't. The Sephardim don't.
You don't say tachnan?
No, sir, you do not.
Oh, interesting. So so like if there's just like if there's a bris in a shul, the whole shul is exempt. So if there's a bar mitzvah going to be that day in the shul.
As far as I know, it's if you're there at the bar mitzvah, then you don't. I don't know about the rest, the rest of the people, if they're multiple minyanim or whatever it is. All I know is that, when I attend
at the bar
mitzvah, we
no
do not take tachnun, because it is a Yom Simcha.
Okay, interesting. Yes, Jeffrey.
So I think the Gemara tells us why we don't say it, Shechianu and Mila, because it says Ozer Lulav Liatzmo, right? The person is not doing his own Mila. You're doing it to somebody else is doing it for you. If you did your own Mila, theoretically, I think based on this, you would say Shechianu.
Right. Well, the question really is the Mila the mitzvah on the father?
Right.
The son?
Correct.
So if the father is doing the mitzvah, again, it's not about who it's done with. It's about who's the mitzvah on. So you would say you're doing the mitzvah. It's like, well, the lulav can't talk, so the lulav doesn't say shachianu. The man who's building it, the man who's putting it together, he's saying the shachianu. The father who's doing the mitzvah, it happens to be on the son, but is it the father's mitzvah, the son's mitzvah? Or
it's a long debate.
That
the father is only Mekayim the mitzvah.
I hear. In other words, you got a point. We have to is it really the son's mitzvah and the father is just allowing the son to fulfill his mitzvah, or is it really at this point it's a mitzvah on the father? And if the child grows up and bar mitzvah and he's still not bris, doesn't have a bris, then he's then it's an obligation on the son, But it would seem that there would be reason. In other words, Taisus does deal with the fact that the Mila, why don't you say a shachianu? So he's definitely not asking why the baby doesn't say shachianu.
Yes, but the Pidyon Ben you do.
In Pidyon Ben you do, and he's also not expecting the baby to do the bracha shachianu by the Pidyon Ben.
If the father didn't do it, then I think even the mother has the obligation.
Interesting.
So I'm a Kohen, so I've been involved with these things. I once was taken somewhere, and I asked all the questions of the mother and the father. You're supposed to ask, is this the first?
Right.
Again, I was supposed to ask, are you a Kohen or Levi? Okay? And if they found out that this relative of my wife's was from a Levi family, and they thought they didn't know that excluded them from having a Pidyon Haben.
So they had a whole festive meal.
Yeah, so we just had a nice breakfast because I asked all the questions.
But
it
could be very embarrassing. Oh boy. What I have found is you sometimes go to a bris and they decide not to do the bris. I have seen that twice at least, where you go to the bris and the moil says, no, baby's too yellow, we're not doing it. Yeah. And so you have a nice breakfast, but it's a little embarrassing for the family,
well, it's good for the kids.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Nowadays, I know it's ideal to have the mohel to be in the same town, so you can go and visit with the child several times beforehand. Because we've seen brisses that was postponed, but beforehand, because of the jaundice.
Right.
But I think that they emphasize that when you do something for yourself that's Mekayim a mitzvah, then you have Shechion. And the rabbis created this idea of the Zaman. This is the bracha is called the bracha of Zaman.
Yeah.
I only learned maybe 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And they created this concept. The word Zaman does not appear in the Torah.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
They created it for these special occasions and for holidays. In the Torah it says Moadim. Okay, and it says Mikra Kodesh, but it doesn't say Zaman.
Interesting.
Very important idea.
Okay, so let's get back to the Gemara here. We're going to start with Itmar. Itmar is Itmar Abayi Yomer Hilchasa Kerebi. We are on page 46a, and we are about 15 lines from the top of the page. (46a), 15 lines from the top. Itmar Abayi Yomer, Abayi says, Hilchasa Kerebi, the halacha follows Rebbe. About tefillin, Rebbe had said that Kol Zman Shemanichon Mevarich Alein. Every time you put it on, you say the bracha. So he says that's the halacha. Bai says Hilchasa Kerebi. V'Rava Amar, but Rava says Hilchasa Kerabanan. The halacha follows the rabbis. What did the rabbis say? The rabbis had said that Einoi Mevarich Ala Shachris Bilvad. That was the rabbi's view. And so it seems like a machlekes Abai and Rava. But then Amar of Mari, Bara Debas Shmuel, the son of the daughter of Shmuel, Rav Mari comes along and says, Chazina Leila Rava, I saw Rava, the loy Ovid Kishmaitze, that he did not do like he said. In other words, he said that the halacha follows the Rabbanon, but I saw him that he didn't follow what is the Shmaitze, the Shmua, the opinion that's known from him. In other words, he didn't go according to that. Ella, rather, Makdim v'koim v'ayil lebeis hakisei. He would get up early, go to the bathroom before he put tefillin on. V'nafik, he would go out. Mashi yadi, wash his hands. Umanach tefillin, put on tefillin. Umavarich, and say the bracha. V'chi itzrach zimna achrina, when he would need another time to go to the bathroom. Ayil lebeis hakisei, he would go to the bathroom. Benafik, and he would go out. Umashi yad, he wash his hands. Umanach tefillin umavarech, and he would put on tefillin, and he would say a bracha again. So you see that he didn't follow the rabbis. Who did he follow? He followed Rebbe. That every time. Now, va'ananami kerebi of Dinon. And we also follow Rebbe. Umavarchin, Kol Shiva, we say the bracha on Sukkah, all 7 days. And Amar Mar Zutra, Chazino Leila Rav Papi. Mar Zutra says, I saw that Rav Papi, Chol Emas, Demanach Tefillin, Mevarich. Every time he would put tefillin on, even many times, multiple times during the day, Mevarich, he would say the bracha on the tefillin. Rabbanon, Devei Rav Ashi. And then it says that the rabbis in the Beis Medrash of Rav Ashi, Kol Emas Demash Meshibahu Mevarchi. Whenever they would touch the tefillin, they would say a bracha. Now, what does this mean? So Rashi says that we do have a statement in the Gemara Yuma that says you're supposed to be memashmesh b'tefillin all the time, just like, or a kavachomer, it's learned as a for sure from the tzitz, that the Kohen Gadol had to always be making sure the tzitz, the headband, golden headband, he had to always make sure that he realized it was on him, and he was memashmish. He would like touch it all the time. So the same thing as tefillin. That's why you see people going around touching their tefillin and kissing it and touching. And the reason is because it's you're mechuyev to, you're obligated to touch the tefillin. Chayav adam lemashmish b'tefillin kol shah. Doesn't mean every second of day. You have to daven, but every whenever you remember the tefillin, whenever you think of the tefillin, you touch it. So so the Gemara seems to be saying that you would say a bracha. Now that sounds a little surprising. Every time you're mamashmish tefillin, say a bracha. So Taisus over here says, "Lo yasparish maihu mavareh." What bracha are you gonna say? Which bracha? So he says he has two options. He says, well, there is a concept of saying a bracha lishmor es chukav, to keep his chukim, and that's a bracha that was said after removing tefillin. I don't know why we don't say that, but there is such a concept of reciting such a bracha that after you remove tefillin, you would say a bracha lishmor es chukav. So that might be the bracha whenever you touch the tefillin, you would say lishmor es chukav, or maybe the bracha is lahaniach tefillin. Every time you touch it, maybe you say the bracha lahaniach. And the problem is that the problem is here, they were on you already. So how could you say lahaniach? So Taisa says mistabra makes sense that it must be the other bracha lishmor chukav, because just like you say that bracha when you remove the tefillin, and it's mentioned in Gemara Nida, they will have to look up over there why we don't say such a bracha, but that's what Taisvis concludes over here. He says that that would be the bracha, seemingly what the rabbis of Rav Ashi were reciting. They were reciting this bracha of lishmor es chukav, and now there is an opinion that this Gemara means something else. That kol emas demamashmashi behu mevarchi, every time that they slipped out of their place and they would put them back in the right location in their arm, they would say a bracha. In other words, they would, according to that meaning, no, that's a whole different meaning. The simple reading of the Gemara is whenever they thought of their tefillin throughout the day, they would, kiss it and say a bracha. They would say the bracha probably before they would kiss it. Whenever they're about to move it, they would to touch it. They would say the bracha. In that, Tosha says it can't be lahaniach because they're not really placing the tefillin. So it would be lishmar chukav. But there is an understanding according to one of the other Rishonim. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch. It's brought in the Rush. That Beis Yosef brings it. That this does not refer to every time you think of your tefillin. Not like Rashi's learning in Tosfos. That this is referring to when the tefillin slips out of its place and you're putting it back in the correct location. So then you would say the bracha of lahaniach tefillin. So now we have a way to explain what the other option is, lahaniach, that might be the meaning. Again, the Gemara doesn't say what bracha, so you have these two ways of understanding it, and which ends up being a difference of what the case is. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, mitzvahs lulav kol shiva. The Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel says, mitzvah lulav is all 7 days. You'd say the bracha. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Amar Yermishain mitzvahs lulav. Yeshua ben Levi says, first day is mitzvah of lulav, midaraisa. Mikan ve'elach mitzvah sekenim. After that, it's midrabanan, and that was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai who established that takana. And it sounds, what he's saying is, and you don't say a bracha. Rabbi Yitzchok Amar kol yoyma mitzvah sekenim, and Rabbi Yitzchok says all the days are a mitzvah sekenim. Vafilu Yom Rishon, and even the first day. Can you say even the first day? Don't we say that the first day is Daraisa? Ema, you have to say Bar Miyam Rishon besides from the first day. That's what. So the Gemara says Ihachi Hainu Rabbi Shimon Levi. So then, isn't that the same as what Rabbi Shimon Levi said? So this the flow doesn't seem to work so well. We started off, Rabbi Yudah Shmuel says, Lulav, every day you got to say the bracha. Then we have Rabbi Shimon Levi, that it's Yom Rishon. You say the bracha, but not the other days. And then we have Rabbi Yitzchok, who initially sounds like he's saying that you never say the bracha. And then the Gemara says that can't be. First day's Daraisa. You hold it to Rabbanan. So he says, no, it must be that he holds the first day, you say the bracha, but besides that, you don't say a bracha. So then that's the same as Rabbi Shimon Levi. That's the second opinion. So Rabbi Yitzchok. So you have to say that that's the way that's the statement here is that Rabbi Yitzchok, that's what it should have said. That Rabbi Yitzchok also holds that way. Vaf Rab Savar Kol Shiva Al Mitzvahs. Kol Shiva. Even Rab holds Kol Shiva as Mitzvahs Lulav. And Barashi, because we see that Chanukah candles is a Rabbanon, and you say a bracha. So obviously, the Rabbanons, you can recite a bracha. And here comes a very interesting Gemara about seeing their Chanukah. Interesting halacha, I should say. What do you say when you see Chanukah candles? Rabbi Yehuda says, so Rabbi Yehuda says on the first day of Chanukah, person who lights the candles, you say three brachas like we do. Lahadlik ner Chanukah or Shel Chanukah, Shachianu and Shas Nisim Lavisinu. Now. The second, but a person who sees only says Shechianu and Shasa Nisim. So you say so you say two brachos. Mikan ve'elach madlik mevarach shtayim v'royim mevarach achas is only Shasa Nisim. So my mevarach baruch Hashem baruch Asher kedushanu b'mitzoyis v'tzivana lahadlik ner either Shel Chanukah or Chanukah. There's two gersois. Ve'heichon tzivanu. Where did Hashem command us? How do you say a bracha on a drabanan? So the Gemara says Milay Sasur. Another pasuk that says, "Ask your father; he'll tell you." A pasuk in the Hazinu. So the Gemara says, "My mamayids man, ema mamayid neis neis kol yom isa." Says, what do you not say? You don't say zman. It says no, maybe it means you don't say the neis. Neis you have every time. It's a question if you read this or not. It's in parentheses. And then the Gemara says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok Masni la behedya Amar Rav Kol Shiva Mitzvahs Lulav. So he learned clearly Rav's opinion about Lulav, that you say the bracha all 7 days. In other words, before we said even Rav holds this, that you would say the bracha all 7 days. And how do you know? Because we know by Chanukah, he says you say the bracha. So you say bracha and Rabbanan. So the Gemara then says that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok said it clearly in the name of Rav that by Lulav you actually say it seven. You say the bracha each time. You don't have to bring a proof from their Chanukah. He actually says it clearly that Rav held that way. All right, we're going to stop here. We'll have to talk about this more tomorrow. Bez Hashem. Zay Gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rebbe. Everybody wish me they're about to tent my house for termites. Not once, but twice. First for the wet termites, then for the dry termites. I don't know if there are separate brachas, but thank you very, very much. Zay Gesund.
Be successful.
Bye.